Good morning. Let me begin by saying what an honor and privilege it is for me to be here with you this morning and especially serving as president of Bevill State Community College. And I pray that my voice finds you and your families doing well during this time of the pandemic. Um, I know that we, as the Bevill State family, we are so glad to have welcomed students back on January the 25th and bringing life and vitality back to our grounds and buildings again. But this morning is also a privilege for me to be a part of our Black History program. I want to say that we acknowledge Black History daily, not just during the month of February. There are countless contributions by so many African Americans to this great country of ours, and we want to say thank you to each and every one of them for their contributions and their sacrifice. It would be difficult for us to have this program, though, each and every year, I think, without acknowledging the gentleman who started it all, and that's Tyrone Webb. If you'll give me just a minute, please bear with me as I share my screen. Some of you may have known Tyrone. Hopefully you see his picture there on the screen now. Tyrone retired from Bevill State on December the 7th, 2018 as the Assistant Dean for Library and Learning Resources. He came to Bevill State in 1989 after serving several years as a librarian for 3 different K through 12 school systems and as an assistant principal at Huffman High School. He was an influential figure at this college for the last 29 years of his career. Mr. Webb started the library at the Bevill State Summerton campus from scratch, from the furniture and shelves to the books to the circulation system. It was Mr. Webb who started this Black History program that we are involved with here today 20 years ago on February the 14th, 2001. His particular focus was to ensure students were educated in the contributions of so many African Americans of this great nation. He grew up in Selma, and as a child, he vividly remembered the fight that African Americans waged to gain the civil liberties entitled to every American citizen. Mr. Webb told the Daily Mountain Eagle in an interview in February of 2018, quote, "The upcoming generation seems to know less about their African American heritage and the contributions of Black people in general. Black history is a part of American history. It is a part of world history, and it needs to be told and retold again and again," end quote. Tyrone Webb is no longer with us. He passed away on May 27th of 2020. But it's impossible for us, as I said earlier, to conduct our annual Black History program without thinking of Tyrone. Today, we say thank you, Mr. Webb, for starting this program and ensuring its success that continues today and tomorrow. If you would at this moment, please join me for a moment of silence for Tyrone Webb. Thank you. Now I have the honor and privilege of introducing our guest speaker for the day, Mr. Adonis Lenzy. Mr. Lenzy is an author, speaker, podcaster, and TV show host who enjoys speaking to people from all walks and stages in life, inspiring them to live the life they have imagined by going after their dreams. Whether speaking at conferences, organizations, churches, or to your staff, his message no doubt inspires to motivate and equip for next level living. Adonis currently resides in the Nashville, Tennessee area with his wife, Heather, and their 2 children, Grayson and Carrington. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Adonis this time. I'm going to try to make you the host, Mr. Lenzy. So if you'll bear with me.
Okay,
But
no trouble.
so thankful to have you here with us today.
It's an honor. It's an honor to be here.
So if you'll give me just a minute, I'll try to get that switched over to you. Okay, Mr. Lenzy, it should be all yours. Thank you.
It is mine. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you guys. Guys, it's an honor and a privilege to be invited to speak to you guys on Black History Month and your program. So thank you guys for the invitation. I'm excited. And I got one question for you guys. How is the weather right now where you are? Put it in the chat. Let me know. Because right now in Nashville, we did get snowed in, but the snow's clear. Kids are back in school. Y'all have sunshine where you are. Excellent, good, sunny, awesome. It's gonna be a great day, awesome, cool. Well, listen, guys, as we talk about Black history and the program, I think it's a time of honoring and celebrating those that have paved the way. And the one thing about Black history is that it's ongoing. I believe with all my heart it's important for us to reflect and learn from history, but history is ongoing. And some of the things I'm going to be sharing with you guys today is a part of Black history from my own family, things that I learned from my parents and my grandparents, that kind of that continued education in Black history, and it's made me the person that I am today. So I'm glad you guys are here. I'm going to share my screen with you. It was amazing, a little breezy. I love this. I love it. The sun's out. It's good. I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and we will kick this thing off. Let's see here. Here we go with the presentation. We'll move forward. Hey guys, before I guess, I always like to give away free stuff. So if you stick with me, pay attention in this presentation. I'm going to show you at the end how you can win a free copy of my book. But you got to stay tuned. You got to stay focused to the end of this whole thing. So what better way to start off a Black History program than honoring and celebrating one of the great heroes of the movement? That's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I love this quote, one of my favorite quotes from him. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. And as I think about Black history, of what I've learned from history, as I think about Black history that my grandparents had to go through and help forge that, and my parents, the word that comes to my mind is challenging times and controversy, but they pushed through and they pushed on in the midst of adversity, challenging times, some unfair times, but it made them the people that they are today, and I'm a part of that. And so I'm excited to be sharing with you guys. As we talk about your program, there was three things you guys want to focus on as the Black family: was representation, identity, and diversity. As we talk about representation, I think it's important too for us to, what does that mean? It's the description or portrayal of someone or something in a particular way, or as being a certain nature, of a certain nature. And as we talk about that and the Black family and representation, I think it's important to begin with the parents, parenthood, fatherhood, motherhood, because in that Black family, that's what has forged us to live the lives that we are living today. And so as we talk about, once again, Black history, let's talk about Black fatherhood. I love this. A little picture here says, a father said to his son, "Be careful where you walk." The son responded, "You be careful, Dad. I walk in your footsteps." And that is so important. As we talk about our history, as we talk about Black fatherhood, I believe it's time for us to revisit our history and learn the strength from fathers in our history. And they were setting the example. They were committed to family. They showing their sons how to honor and respect women. One of the things I do, as I learned from my dad and my my grandfather, is how to honor and respect women. And that was taught to me, that was shown me. And I began to see how they honored their wives and just their mothers and women in general. And one of the things I practice with my son, I want him to see how I honor and respect his mother. We have this ongoing thing in my family when, whether my wife's at work or if I'm at work and we come home, the children are here, the first person that we go up to is each other. I want my children to see that I love my wife, their mother, and I practice that. And sometimes my son tries to beat me to his mother and give her a kiss first, and she goes, nope. She puts up the hand in the face and said, this is for daddy. And so we practice that, but we believe that as Black fathers, and I've got many friends that are African-American fathers, we believe it's our duty, our responsibility to continue to pave the way for the generation that's coming behind us, showing them what fatherhood is all about, showing them that fatherhood means we're going to take care of our children, that showing them means that we're gonna be responsible, and we're not just gonna have a child and not have anything to do with it. No, we're gonna be responsible for our children. We're gonna show them the way. We're gonna bring them up. We're gonna love them. We're gonna surround them with love and the security that they need. You know, when I think about my dad and my grandfather, strong men that face so much adversity. In fact, here's a story from my grandfather. This is an actual picture many years ago. I pointed him out with the arrow there. His name is Washington Harrison. In fact, my middle name is Washington. That's where I get my middle name, Adonis Washington Lenzy. And he was my great grandfather. And I never will forget, he was telling us a story one day of how no matter how hard times are, you're going to have to be a man and do what you have to do, no matter what somebody calls you or what somebody says about you. And he grew up in a time of heavy segregation and racism. But he showed us the example to love everybody. In fact, never one day did I see him angry at somebody. Never one day did I see him in a bad mood, but he loved everybody and he did what he had to do. And there's an amazing story that he told us. He's passed away, he's in heaven right now, but he told us, you know, one day he lost his job and they laid him off, and he didn't just sit at home. He hit the trail trying to find another job because he had a family to take care of. And he walked 5 miles down to the nearest place where he felt like he could probably get a job, and it was a rice plant. And he walked out there 5 miles and got a hold of the foreman, and the foreman said, no, I don't have a job for you. And so every single day, this is one of the most important stories he ever told me, every single day for 2 weeks, my grandfather got up, fixed him a lunch, put it in his lunch pail, and walked 5 miles back to that rice plant. And he stood on the hilltop at attention while everybody else was down there working. At lunchtime, when all the workers sat down and ate their lunch, he would sit down on that hill and he would eat his lunch. When the whistle blew to go back to work, all the workers went back to work. My grandfather would stand back up at attention and just look down over onto that rice plant and look at the workers and the foreman. And he did that for 2 solid weeks. And for 2 weeks, he got called every name you can imagine. For 2 weeks, he got ridiculed and they called him everything. But he stood there at attention, being strong, because he knew he had a family to take care of. And at the end of that 2 weeks, the foreman walked back up to that hill and he looked my grandfather in the eye and he called him sir. Now, can you imagine that? My grandfather went from everybody calling him all kind of racial slurs and names to this foreman walked back up and called him sir. And he says, sir, you've been here 2 weeks. You've convinced me that you want a job. And he gave my grandfather a job that day, Long story short, my grandfather outworked every worker in that rice plant to where the foreman put him in charge. And I love that story because he was tenacious. He was focused. He wanted to make sure that he provided for his family in the midst of challenging times. And as I think about that history, that's part of my history that I can pass on to my children and they can pass on to their children. That's what Black history is all about. And I'm sure my great grandfather learned that from his parents, coming through some challenging times. And as I said before, history's ongoing and we learn as we go on with our history. So I love my grandfather. I share his name. I'm proud of it. And I love telling that story. So that's with fatherhood. As we think about motherhood, I love this quote by Maya Angelou. Kind of describes my mom and my grandmothers. She said, to describe my mother would be to write about a hurricane in its perfect power. I think about my mom, my grandmothers, who they were, what they stood for. I'm telling you, they were mental and physical strength. They had that. They were women that took care of their families. They were women that were strong. And as I think about the history of our Black mothers, I think about them being mentally strong, them being physically strong, raising children, encouraging children, being there for children, being that mama bear for their children. They had a strong faith in God. This is part of our heritage, our history, where our African Americans had nobody to depend on but God. And I love that because I still carry that as part of my history today, as being someone in the ministry for over 20 years. That came from a lineage of history and my grandmother's strong faith in God. And I think about that as African-American women has carried that in being the matriarchs of their family. And this is here, I love this. They were respected by their children. Now, I've got some stories to tell you about my grandmothers, but I tell you what, when I think about the African-American mother, is like demanded respect from children. And I think that was very healthy coming up in my household. And I pass it on to my children as well. I got a picture of my grandmothers because once again, it's part of history. It's my history, but it's still Black history, and we carry that. My grandmother, Otha Lee Temple, raised 5 children on her own, not because she was a single mother to begin with, but her husband, my grandfather, passed away at the age of 35 years of age of a massive heart attack, and she was left alone to raise 5 children, but she was strong. She was determined. She had willpower to make sure that her children were raised successfully, to go on and be productive in society. And I love that about her. I love that I learned from her. What she passed on to me was that strength, that fortitude, but also that faith in God. She would tell us stories how, as being a single mother and having to have at different times multiple jobs, meaning she'd have to roll up her sleeves and do what she had to do in order to take care of her children. And there was one time she told us that she just couldn't make ends meet, and they were without groceries, didn't have any food. The children were hungry, and because of her faith in God, and I'm not preaching a message here, but I'm sharing about her history, and because of her faith in God, she, by faith, she said one day she got up, no groceries in the house, but she said by faith, she got up and she said a prayer to God and asked God to provide something for her children to eat. And by faith, she got up and she went to her kitchen and she grabbed her pots and pans and she grabbed one of her biggest pots and filled it with water. And she put it on the burner and she turned it on and sat there and watched as the water started boiling. And she said, God, I need you to provide food for my family. And she said about 5 minutes later, there was a knock at the front door, and she walked over to the front door, and as she opened up the front door, there was somebody she hadn't seen in a while, a friend of hers, and the friend said, "Miss Temple, I was at the grocery store and something just told me to maybe you needed some groceries." And there the friend was standing with 2 big bags of groceries in their arms and gave to my grandmother. And I love that story because I still draw from that today as part of my history. And that's something that she taught us as little children, to really press into God for the help that we needed and to never give up. And I love that because she was a strong woman. As I think about my other grandmother, Viola Johnston, I think as a part of Black heritage, there's always that grandmother that doesn't take anything, okay, from her children, grandchildren. She's going to demand your respect. She's going to make sure you, excuse me, you know how to respect your elders. And I remember one day I was at the grocery store with my grandmother Viola, and I saw this little kid, and he was in the aisle with his mom, and he said, "Hey," he reached for a candy bar and said, "Hey, Mom, I want this candy bar." And his mother said, "No, Johnny, you can't have that candy. It's going to ruin your lunch." And Johnny threw a fit in the grocery store in the middle of that aisle. And his mother quickly said, "Okay, baby, okay, you can have it. You can have it. You can go ahead, just be quiet. You can have that, girl. You can have that candy bar." And I was with my grandmother and I saw that and I thought, okay, if that works for Johnny, maybe it'll work for me. Okay. And I don't know what I was thinking, but I reached and grabbed a candy bar, and my grandmother said one time, "No, Adonis, you cannot have that. It's going to ruin your dinner. We're going to go home and have dinner. You can't have that candy bar." And I kind of tried to pull a Johnny on her, and I was like, "I want it now." And I don't remember anything after that when I yelled at my grandmother. Okay. Yes, right. She slapped me one time. I'm on the floor. But I think about that. It demanded respect, and I'm thankful that she taught us those lessons, because it taught us through our history how to respect our elders, how to respect people in authority. And I think that is so important for us as a nation, as a country, to go back and revisit some of that heritage. We honor, we respect, and I think that's important for each and every one of us. So those are stories from my grandfather and my grandmother. So hope you guys enjoy those. As we move on, we talk about identity. This is where I want to spend a little time at, with our identity, the fact of being who or what a person or thing is, our identity. And one of the things I want to start off with by saying is never let your struggle become your identity. Okay? As I talked about the struggle of my grandparents and the struggle of my grandfather, he never let that struggle become his identity. He knew who he was. And I want to remind you that are watching today, never let the struggle that you go through, that's not who you are. Don't let that become your identity, okay? Your identity is who you already are. And as I think about that, the importance of Black history, because sometimes we forget. It's easy for us.
Garbage, you don't want any more.
Hello? It's easy for us to forget who we are. It's easy for us to forget who we're made to be. It's easy for us to forget our heritage, our history, when we start focusing on what's going on. We start focusing on our struggle. And that's why I want to remind you, this is so important. Never let your struggle become your identity. When I think about the identity of African Americans and Black history, I think about Black Wall Street. This is such an amazing time in the history of African Americans. Black Wall Street in the early 1900s, it was the wealthiest Black community in the United States of America. It was located in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Okay, that's part of our history, and I believe it's so important to remind our African American young people, and just all of our young people today, that they can be successful, that they were destined to be successful. That is part of their history, their lineage. And I think about Black Wall Street. I think about who they were. They were leaders in their community. And I think that's so important as we push our young people to be leaders in their school, in their neighborhoods, their community. Our heritage teaches us that they had strong family units. This was an entire population there in Tulsa with strong family units, strong fathers, strong mothers, strong children. They were productive in society. That's one of the things my grandparents instilled in us: to always be productive. You need to be producing something. That's who you are, who you are, and what you're capable of doing. They were productive. They didn't just sit around and wait for somebody to do the work for them. They were productive. They produced in society. They were progressive, meaning they were always moving forward, looking for new ideas, new ways, new concepts, very creative. And I remind, especially our African-American youth, that, hey, this is a part of who you are. This is a part of your lineage. This is a part of your history. Don't lose sight of that by looking at where you are today. Don't lose sight of that, but use that to propel you into the future and the destiny that you're supposed to be living. They were progressive and they were very successful. And I think that's one of the things, if I could echo to the African-American young generation today, is you are destined to be successful. It's in you, it's there. You've got to put in the work. You've got to do what you need to do in order to make that happen. And so many times in history, as in today, we could be going through a very successful time, and then something happens that blindsides us and causes us to maybe lose that success temporarily. Okay, that's just a temporary moment. And once again, we can't let what's going on around us be our identity. We've got to hold on to people that have paved the road before us. Once again, I believe Black Wall Street was one of the greatest things in our African-American community, that's a part of our lineage, our history, that can continue to empower us. It can continue to enlighten us and educate us as to all the things that we're capable of doing because of our lineage and our history. As I think about this, as Black Wall Street was destroyed, and time for this session doesn't permit me to really go into a lot of depth, but in 1921, hate-filled mobs destroyed more than 35 blocks of the Black Wall Street community. That means they burned businesses down. They burned homes down where the African-American community was living. People lost their lives in such a horrible, horrible moment in our history, in America. But you know what? That doesn't steal what's implanted in us as African Americans. It doesn't take that away, but it continues to echo that we can be resilient, we can overcome, we can push through, we can rebuild. And I love when I'm talking to African American young men and young women and teaching them and letting them know, hey, you're going to hit some hard times. That's part of the journey. But learn from people that have paved the road. Learn from moments in history like Black Wall Street, when a horrible injustice was done, but yet still leaders emerged and they kept moving forward in a positive direction and rebuilding, forging the future for their children and for their friends and for their neighbors and for their families. And so even after Black Wall Street, we go back to this quote, guys. I know I've shared it several times, but never let your struggle become your identity, okay? Listen, because Black Wall Street was burned, it couldn't burn what was on the inside, because there were still people that arose and pushed forward. I think about Madam Walker. When I think about entrepreneurship and a business owner, that is something I believe we've got to remind our African-American young men and women that this is what you're destined to do. She was recorded as one of the first made millionaires in the Guinness Book of World Records. She developed a hair products, and she did that. And I think, you know, you could go through many different stories like this and see many, many people of African-American descent that did great things and were entrepreneurs. And that's one of the things that I echo with my children, beyond just getting a job. Hey, maybe you're supposed to be a business owner or an entrepreneur. Let's investigate that. As I think about other African-American men, Garrett Morgan, an inventor, be creative. An American inventor, businessman. He made the three-way traffic stop and I think it was a gas mask as well. But he did all that with a sixth grade education, which when I teach our students today, I'm like, okay, if he did it with a sixth grade education, imagine what you can do with a college education, how much further you will go. No excuses. You got to keep moving forward in your life and become everything that you're destined to be. And once again, this is part of the history that continues to empower us. It continues to educate us, and it continues to give us hope. And I think in this world today, if there's one thing that people of all colors need right now, is hope for a better tomorrow, hope for a better future, hope for a brighter future, hope for great things to come. And I want to just let you know today, listen, it doesn't stop here. These are people from our past, but even today we keep forging. There's many African Americans that are doing great things in our history, making history today. But you know what? All that stemmed from our history makers yesterday. And that's why I love Black history. And I agree, Black history is not just a 1 month affair. It's every day we can explore Black history and the accomplishments that were made that can help us forge a better tomorrow. As I think about this, it gives us the right to encourage entrepreneurship with our young people, inspire them for innovation, to be creative, to think outside of the box. One of the things that I focus on with my young son is he loves to he loves math, and he loves to try to figure out how things happen. And so when we go into a restaurant, he never just asks, you know, what does he want to eat or look at the menu, but he asks questions like, okay, Dad, where did they order the food from to get to the restaurant? Who brought the food to them? How do they charge prices for them? So I already have him thinking in that entrepreneur mindset. I have him think of innovative ways. Every summer, when he wants to make a little extra money, I charge him and challenge him. Hey, be creative. Daddy will get behind you. Be creative. And he'll go outside and set up a little stand, and he'll sell some of his old toys, his old games and stuff like that, and his Xboxes and all that good stuff, but teaching him to be innovative and to inspire to business ownership. I believe with all my heart, there's a lot of young people of all races that are destined to be business owners. And we encourage school, college, and career. Okay, and we and also go a little extra further with that. I teach my kids it's you don't want to just be successful so you can say you're successful, but you've got to pay that forward. And why do you want to be successful? Who are you going to help once you are successful? And then we encourage hard work. At the end of the day, I don't care what color you are, if you're going to be successful, you got to put in the hard work. Okay, can't be lazy. Favorite quote by Kobe Bryant. He said, I can't relate to lazy people. We don't speak the same language. I don't understand you. I don't want to understand you. And we all know just the greatness that Kobe Bryant brought to the game of basketball. And so unfortunate for his life to be taken, and he's gone on, but he left a legacy here. He left something that I believe young athletes can look to and be inspired to put in the hard work and to keep moving forward no matter what. The third one we come to, and we'll wrap it all up here. I think we got a few more moments, a few more minutes here. But when I think about diversity, the practice or quality of including, my screen is including or involving people from a range of different social and ethnic backgrounds. Now, I've talked a little bit about my past history with my grandparents and my parents. I was raised in an all Black family and learned a lot about our culture, and a lot of things were instilled into me. And growing up, uh, as I reached adulthood, got married. Uh, Many of you may not know this, but I am married to a white woman. So my family, when we talk about diversity, my family is very diverse, a diverse family. Uh, my wife, Heather, she was born in Wisconsin. I remember she told me, she said, I never saw a Black person until I went to almost till I got to high school. And she never dreamed in a million years she'd be married to a Black person. But I love that because when we got together, that was something new for me because it challenged me to explore with intentionality her background, her way of thinking. And when we had kids, that took us to a whole nother level. When our kids, by the time they got to age 5, that's when more of awareness began to hit that, okay, Mom, you're white. Okay, Dad, you're Black. They were still trying to figure out what color they were. And in the midst of all of that, it put our family on a amazing journey of talking openly about our culture, our preferences, our differences, and we celebrate that with our diversity. And when I think of the African American family, and I think of going back to my great grandfather and my great grandmother, I remember going up when I'd be at their house. My great grandmother was her gift was cooking. She loved to cook. So she would cook plates of food for all of the neighbors. And I just remember there were times where there were many different races inside of their house, white people, Hispanic people, Puerto Rican, just different people of races inside their house eating together. And as I thought about that, that's something I want my family to represent as well. Now, my great grandparents did that at a very segregated time in America. But today, I should be more willing and ready and able to accept that. And so with our family being so diverse, we've just been intentional about teaching our children to even learn outside of their race. Now, they've got to learn about the white race, the Black race, and then we expand it. We want them to learn every culture and explore different cultures. My son, I remember one day he came home from school. I think he was maybe in first grade. And it was around this time, this month, we were talking about Black history and Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. And I remember my son came home and he had this confused look on his face. And he said, "Now, Daddy," he said, "why did they kill him?" Talking about Martin Luther King. And he said, were they mad? Were the people on the bus mad? And he was referring to Rosa Parks. And so that gave us just an amazing time of teaching him to where he could understand. And we never teach our kids to be mad at people, but we teach our kids to understand people and to offer grace and still be kind no matter how they are treated. And so in our diverse family, once again, my wife is white, I'm Black, my kids are of 2 different races, and we want them to celebrate that. There are times where it's so funny. There's times during the winter where their skin gets a little pale and they're like, okay, now we look more like Mom. But in the summertime, they love it because they get that tan and they're like, hey, mom, you're the whitest person in the family right now. So, but they understand that and they celebrate that. And they're not embarrassed by who they are. They celebrate their diversity. And if I can leave you with anything, I think it's so important, especially in the times that we live in right now, is for all of us to be willing and able to sit down with people of a different color and begin to have some open, honest communication about race, about our background, and about how we can dwell together in unity. I'll leave you with a few thoughts and then I'll turn this back over. But we got to have intentional conversations with people who are different than you. That is so important. Have those intentional conversations with people that are different from you. Be open to learning from other cultures. Be open to learning from other cultures. Ask questions. Ask questions. And I'll share this with you. You know, when all of this broke out and during the some of the riots and during some of the Black Lives Matter movement, you know, there were a lot of people that were just, there was a very high tense moment in our country. And in my neighborhood, you know, I was asking God, what can I do? What can I do here? I didn't post anything on social media because that can be misconstrued or taken out of context. So what I did, I reached out to my community. And on our Facebook page, our community neighborhood Facebook page, I posted. I said, hey guys, I'm going to be sitting out on my porch for the next 30 minutes. If anybody wants to come over and have an open, honest conversation about race or what's going on in our country, come on over. And I hit post on that. And about 5 minutes later, I had neighbors started walking over, all different colors. And we sat in my driveway for like 3 hours. Amazing conversation as we gave the opportunity to ask questions, to not be defensive, to not be angry, but to have open conversation about what's going on in our country and how do we come together and move forward. And I think I learned that as part of my history from my grandparents, always having people of different races at their house, sitting at the dinner table, eating and having conversation with one another. So ask those questions and be open. And then remember, we're all in this together. Amen. We're all in this together. And once again, as we celebrate Black history, I think it's something that we do, not just in February, but as we move forward in life. It's part of our history, our heritage. And it's not just, to me, it's not just how can that benefit Black people? How can that benefit all people of all races as we move forward together? Okay, guys, listen, that's my time with you. I hope you guys enjoyed this. It's been a pleasure and an honor being here with you guys. Hope you enjoyed the story of my grandparents as well. And if you want to continue to keep up with me, there's a few things. All of my social media things are right there. You can jot that down. And I also said at the beginning of this, I was going to give you a chance to enter into a competition to win a free copy of my book, Next. Great motivational book that'll help inspire you, encourage you to go after those dreams. All you got to do, if you've been watching a part of this, all you have to do, you can take a QR code, a snapshot of that, or go to my website, email me by midnight tonight. Okay, for this particular one, email me by midnight tonight. And all you have to do is when you go to my website, you can go to adonislenzy.com. You can click the contact button. It'll open up to where you can send me an email, or if you hit the QR code, it'll open up to that page. Send me that email and give me one takeaway thought from this presentation that stood out to you that you feel like you can use to move forward. Okay, guys, just by midnight tonight, just a simple email. It doesn't have to be a book. It can be just one or two sentences. Doesn't have to be long, but just share one takeaway thought that you got from this presentation. Okay, guys, listen, it's been fun. It's been a pleasure, been an honor. Thank you guys for inviting me to be a part of your Black History program. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and I guess I need to turn it back over. Or do I need to turn this back over to? I'm gonna change the host.
Adonis, thank you so much for being with us today. What an inspirational message. It was absolutely great.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Hope you guys did too.
Yes, sir. And we look forward to visiting with you again tomorrow.
Yes, sir. I'll be here.
All right. God bless. Thank you, Adonis. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.